Welcome to Horror Bytes on Save Room, the show where we discuss the smaller scares and teenier terrors available to play on your gaming devices. From 5-minute prototypes to tantalising demos and ambitious small-scale games, Horror Bytes aims to celebrate all kinds of terrifying micro-monsters in the indie horror gaming space, with 2 games in each episode picked for a particular theme. I am your host Neil Bolt, and joining me in this endeavour as ever is Jay Krieger. How are you doing, Jay?
Doing well, man. Looking forward to navigating the cosmos one tangent at a time this week with you.
Indeed, because we are back with our latest theme, where I have brought us space. That was my highly original idea and naming this time around. The theme means that we can pick from all manner of space-going small horror games, concept game jams, and the like, with that cosmic flavour. So first up for this episode, Jay brings us a meet cute with a disturbing twist. Tell us more about your pick then, Jay.
Yeah, my pick this week was Astronaut, which is a visual horror novel as part of a submission for Monstrous Desires Jam from 2 years ago, 2024. And this is from developer Deer Sphere Studios. Again, like talking that up to one of my favorite recent developer names that we've stumbled upon here. But in this game, it has a pretty familiar setup for a lot of sci-fi or space horror, that being the player suddenly awakes aboard a vessel. This time you are tasked with being basically like the maintenance man of this vessel, and you awaken to emergency lights flashing and the crew is missing. But then, after very quick exploration of the vessel, you encounter a crew member who you can't quite put a face to the suit that they are wearing. And so the player, in sort of getting to have conversations with them and further explore the ship and the rather oddities that are aboard that ship, kind of like come to light through those interactions and whatnot. I think for me, like first and foremost, outside of obviously the quality of writing for a visual novel, is the visual component. And here I think that the graphics are really, really well done. The sort of like just basically setting of the scene that plays out and whatnot is really, really well done with the art style. It's, a little cartoony, but at the same time, I think that the color palette there within does a good job of like sort of just presenting this as an environment that like is filled with mystery, but at the same time, it's not, it doesn't come on too strong up front with sort of like the notion of what could, be behind the disappearance and whatnot. It kind of, I think that cartooniness to the graphical style, which, seems like a blending of almost like charcoal and colored, sort of like colored pencils style, like comic book style, is one that affords that sort of like, you don't have to overly rely on the scare factor almost, because of the fact this is a bit longer than some of our other horror bites. It takes about roughly 40 minutes, give or take, to get through this. And so it really is just about like the quality of the interactions with, again, this other person that you encounter, who, again, you're going to learn all about them and whatnot, along with the various happenings aboard the ship. So I think in terms of just like the presentation side of things, this again kind of further speaks to the importance of the presentation for visual novels. Like we've played a number of like horror themed text novels that can also be quite affecting. But here, this is again like an example of one that I think you really get a lot of mileage out of. This very sort of maybe presents as a twee at times, but at the same time, like the thematics there within, delve into the body horror side of things and definitely go down the more horror route. So it's a nice kind of like foundation before things truly kind of like go off the rails in that regard. How did you kind of find Astronaut? Because you're the one that got me into all these visual novels. How does this kind of like stack up in terms of your first impressions and then ultimately the trajectory of its narrative?
Yeah, I mean, like many a good visual novel, it starts with a little bit of a mystery, and like the hook of it coming in as quick as it does. Yeah, I was intrigued as well straight away, and tonally, the humor of it and the slightly weird nature of it. I think the visual style, as you pointed out, like suits it quite well. I think having that slight cartoonish edge does make it slightly off kilter, puts you off of like thinking it's something a bit more serious, but it's there under the surface, and yeah, it is really deceptive like that. Just the concept in itself is like we've seen ideas similar to it in other spaces and in this space, but it's the way it's executed and mixing together certain elements. I'm dancing around a lot of things here because you kind of have to play it to really get that. But yeah, I did like how it sort of played with some very popular themes and ideas of like certain indie games and puts them into this small sort of body horror sort of thing. And yeah, like I think without spoiling too much, like there's lines of questioning that are quite interesting as well. And like again, not trying to be profound necessarily, but like things that at least make you think and also make you go what sort of thing. And yeah, I really like those sort of questions and stuff. And when it does start to go a bit like off track, if you will, and get a bit darker, it's like it does it. Yeah, it just comes across as being meaningful in a way that because of that sort of initial sort of meet cute esque sort of setup that you have of it. Yeah, it was again without spoiling too much for 40 minutes odd 45-ish. I think I really did quite enjoy the world they built up, and yeah, their original artwork is great at sort of setting the scene, especially with like the red light stuff early on as well. Like just and the ship design, while very familiar with stuff we've seen in other sort of sci-fi. Yeah, it's just like because it's hand drawn, it just has a personality of its own, and I think that's what's really important to this story is that even though it is sort of begging, stealing, and borrowing from other things, it's because it's presented in this way that is very distinctly this developer's identity. It's like yeah, it feels fresh, and I think those component parts coming together in the way they do helps it feel fresh as well.
Yeah, I was a little bummed to see that since Astronaut had been released, Deer Sphere Studios hadn't released anything else on their Geo page. However, they do have two previous visual novel horror games out before this one. So I'm going to go back and check those out because one of them is described as like the slow burn horror game that's kind of looks like it's right up my alley, and the other one is like set on a college. So I think it's cool just to see like a variety of themes being tackled by this developer, and if Astronaut is sort of like them presenting a project that is like the summation of their skills with the previous two, like it'll be interesting to go back to some of their works and see like if I can pick out the aspects that they kind of were building upon in their sort of pursuing of other genres, projects and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think in their sort of description of saying they make visual novels that they first for in secret but find lacking around the internet. It's like it does feel like that. Like someone's like, well, I don't see a game like this out there, like for me, so I'll make it, sort of thing. Which is certainly where that sort of identity comes into it. So yeah, that's a good one. That's a good start, and we always like a good start, but it can't always keep going good, unfortunately. But when we are back in a moment, we will go into that second game, but we'll have a quick break first. Welcome back, and for my pick, we have Ragtag Radical's Space God. In this pixel art horror game, you are collecting samples from a dormant space entity. You were originally part of a crew, but many days in, you are now alone in performing this task. So you are basically a ship in space, going out into, departing that ship to go and collect samples from this sort of drifting, dormant entity. And doing so, you sort of use the mouse and keyboard to sort of use your tools. You have a hook, you have like a sampler, things like that, a stabilizer to sort of keep you in place. All simple stuff, kind of like doing space travel in a pixel art 2D thing. And visually, it's quite interesting, even though it's mostly single screen stuff. It's looks really nice for pixel art. Unfortunately, it is a game that runs really poorly. It's very badly optimized, as I think you pointed out to me as well, like before coming into it. And like I like to often when I'm doing this, with these like with two screens, is I'll play the game on itch.io like on one screen whilst stopping writing my notes now and again. Couldn't do that with this game because it slowed down
Mhm.
everything else while it was on,
Yeah.
which wasn't good. Um, and yeah, like the game itself was just running so slowly and painfully so. So it just made the whole experience really laborious, which for a game that isn't exactly speeding along as it is, in terms of what it's doing. I mean, yeah, I like the idea and I like, you know, the look of it, but yeah, unfortunately, this game really didn't end up being like very well made in that regard.
No, it wasn't, and that was really disappointing. It's the type of thing where we always try to give Horror Bytes a fair shake, and
Yeah.
we could see a good amount of sort of like early indications that, like, oh, okay, maybe they had a very clear vision for this game in terms of like
Mm.
the look, as you mentioned, like the pixel art style. I think is complementary to exploring the deep unknowns of space and whatnot, and like mechanically speaking, I understand what they were going for, but like you said, it's just so poorly optimized that, and I hate referring to games like this, but it really was a chore to
Yeah.
try to play this. And, you know, we're not big on giving ourselves a cap for how much time to spend with games, but when it's in a state such as this that, I would say it borderlines unplayable, to your point, like it slows down and not only other things that you're trying to do, but just like the overall performance is so poorly optimized that I basically set myself like a 15-minute limit with this. And I was just
Yeah.
like, if I'm able to play it in a different browser or maybe at one point, it just kind of like settles into actually running smoothly, that'd be great. But
Mm.
after a certain point, I was just like, yeah, this has a lifespan of 15 minutes. And no matter what, I'm going to have to bail after that because of the fact that, as we said, it very poorly runs and whatnot. And again, like I don't even think this was one that you could download. I think it was browser only, was it not?
Yeah, as far as I could see, anyway. But
Yeah.
and that's the big problem is like the browser
Right.
running of it is like poorly optimized and doesn't
Mhm.
have like, I mean, you can't see the whole damn screen like for a start without scrolling across, which obviously stops working as a thing when
Yeah.
you go full screen.
Mhm.
But going full screen is the only way to really see enough of the game to sort of play it properly.
Yeah.
And yeah, the reaction times are, I mean, just as a sort of case in point here, like when I was doing like my notes thing, I started doing my notes on my phone instead, and I could obviously see on my screen like the stuff coming through as I was
Mm.
typing it normally, but like it was coming through so much a long time after I had done it. I mean, that's how much it was just slowing things up. Yeah, it's a shame, and I get it. Game jam things. It's like you try to make certain things in a certain way, especially for 3 days, and I certainly think that for myself, I was sat there looking and going, "Where do I start?" Sort of thing. Like,
Right. Yeah.
so yeah, I get that it's not easy to just get everything sort of finished in that time period, and I do think sometimes we've come to games that have done this and like probably been able to fix stuff later. Like,
Mm.
they've done the game jam thing. They're like, okay, yeah, we'll keep working on this a little bit more just to finish up. And yeah, this only came out like what,
20 days ago,
20
as of
days
our
ago, yeah.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah, and had been updated once already, so maybe they'll come back and like add something to it. But as a little sort of simulator, it's you've got to be very careful with making a simulator if you want to make it like tactile and
Mm.
interesting. And if it doesn't work at a decent speed, especially, you are going to struggle. And
Yeah.
especially when the game itself isn't meant to run at like a massive speed itself. So yeah, big shame, but. Yeah, as we say, yeah, they can't all be the winners we want them to be. And yeah, considering how many hundreds of games we covered at this point on Horror Bytes, it's inevitable that it'll happen now and again. So
Yeah.
because we do go into these blind generally, and yeah, sort of inside baseball thing here, that my two picks for this theme have both been duds for different reasons, and like, so look, but I'll be repicking my second pick anyway. But hopefully, the next episode we get back on track, and but we still had one pretty good game here this week in Astronaut, so Not all bad. Not all bad. Yeah, that is it for this week. You can find links to the games in the description for this episode. And thank you again, Jay, for talking about these games with me. But if you, the listener, do have a short horror game, demo, game jam entry, proof of concept, anything like that you think we should be highlighting, or maybe you just want to suggest like a theme for the episode, Jay here will tell you, in fact, how.
Yeah, so people can follow us on their preferred social media platforms. We're on everything at Safe Room Pod, and our Gmail is saferoompod@gmail.com if you want to send us emails, either praise or pity or recommendations and whatnot. So feel free to reach out to us at saferoompod@gmail.com and on all social platforms at saferoompod.
Fantastic. And we will be back with 2 more small-scale horror games with a space theme in 2 weeks' time.